If you have been on Nigerian X, formerly Twitter, in the last few weeks, you must have seen the name Ugo. Now, for those who missed it, here is the short version. Ugo is a UK-based Nigerian tech founder, and to the outside world, his marriage looked beautiful. He posted about his wife constantly, posted videos of his love, his commitment, and his devotion to her. He even relocated her to the United Kingdom and paid her school fees in British pounds. And when their child was born in 2024, he bought a car as a push gift. He even built her a pregnancy app. Now, from all indications, this man was all in. And then, he alleged he found out she had been sleeping with another man in his own house while he was in London working to fund their lifestyle. His post went viral immediately, and the pain in the post was undeniable. He wrote, and I quote, "It's crazy. You are in my house, sleeping with another man, but I'm in London, working my ass out to pay your school fees in British pounds." Now, the divorce has since been finalized. His ex-wife has denied the allegations entirely and is now demanding a public apology and 500 million naira in damages for defamation. The full truth, as is almost always the case with stories like this, is more complicated than the version that went viral. But I'm not here to be judge and jury on Ugo and his ex-wife. That is not our job. What I'm here to do is answer the question that nobody in that entire week of debate was actually addressing. Not whether she did it, not who was right or wrong, but the deeper question underneath all of it. Why does this happen? Why does someone betray a partner who has given them everything? What is actually going on in the mind of a person who makes that choice? That is what this episode is about. I am Angelo, and this is the Clarity Podcast. Before we go any further, let me be completely clear about something. This episode is not about justifying cheating. Not even a little. Cheating is a choice, a deliberate one, and it causes real and deep pain, and sometimes permanent damage to real human beings. The person sitting on the receiving end of that betrayal, and I know some of you listening are that person, or have been that person, did not deserve what happened to them. And no psychological framework can change that. No research finding can soften the pain. But understanding why something happened is never the same as saying it was okay. Now, I also want to address something else. When some people saw the working title of this episode, "Why Good People Cheat," the immediate reaction was, "This must be rage bait." And I can understand that reaction, especially with the Ugo story still fresh. In a climate where everyone is already emotional about infidelity, anything that sounds like it is offering sympathy to a cheater can feel like a provocation. But here's the thing about rage bait. Rage bait is content that makes you angry without giving you anything useful in return. What I am trying to do is the exact opposite. I want to take a topic that already has everyone furious and replace some of that fury with understanding. Not because anger is wrong. Anger at betrayal is completely legitimate. But because understanding is more useful than anger alone. You can be furious and informed at the same time. That is the whole point of this episode. The title, "Why Good People Cheat," is not a defense of cheaters. It is a question, and it is the most honest question we can ask about infidelity. Because the uncomfortable truth is that not everyone who cheats is a bad person. Some of them are people who made a catastrophically bad decision. And the difference between those two things matters, not for the cheater's sake, but for the person on the receiving end, for their ability to make sense of what happened, for healing, and for future decisions about who to trust and why. And so, with that said, let us get into the actual psychology. Let us start with the assumption that drives almost every conversation about infidelity in Nigerian communities. And the assumption is that people who cheat do so because something is wrong in the relationship, or that love has faded, the intimacy is gone, or maybe they have found someone better, or the relationship is broken and cheating is the symptom, or the other partner is not doing enough to keep them happy in the relationship. Now, all of these sound logical, but the research says it is often completely wrong. Now, there's a Belgian-American relationship therapist, Dr. Esther Perel, who has spent decades specifically studying infidelity across cultures. And her conclusion, after documenting thousands of cases, is that a significant number of people who cheat are not unhappy in their relationships. They are not planning to leave. In fact, they still love their partners, and yet they cheat. So when you sit with that for a second, you see that it collapses the most common defense the person who got cheated on reaches for. The idea that if they had just done something differently, being something more, the betrayal would not have happened. In most cases, this is not true. The research says that cheating had very little to do with the partner and has almost everything to do with what was happening inside the person who chose to cheat. And that is the first and most important thing I want anyone who has been cheated on to hear today. In the majority of documented cases, it was not about you. It was never about you. So if it is not about a bad relationship, what then is it actually about? Infidelity can be traced to 3 core psychological drivers, and these are not mutually exclusive. Some people are driven by more than one at the same time, but understanding each one separately changes how you read cheating behavior completely. The first driver is the search for a lost self. Dr. Perel describes this as one of the most common and least talked about motivations behind infidelity, and it has almost nothing to do with the partner. Think about what long-term relationships do to a person's identity over time. You become a spouse, a parent, a provider. You become defined by roles and responsibilities. The version of yourself that existed before all of that, the free, open, unencumbered, full of possibility version of yourself, starts to feel like someone you used to know. The affair, in this framework, is not an escape from the relationship. It is an escape from the self the relationship has produced. The other person is often not more attractive or more exciting than the partner at home. They are simply someone who does not know you as anyone's husband or wife. Around them, for the first time in years, you get to be undefined. And that feeling of lightness, of aliveness, of possibility, is what the person is actually chasing. This is why people who love their partners still cheat. They are not looking for a replacement. They are looking for a feeling they lost somewhere along the way and do not know how to find inside their existing life. That does not make it right. But it explains something that destroys many betrayed people from the inside. The question of why someone who clearly loved them could still do this. And the answer in this case is that the affair was not a verdict on the partner's worth. It was an expression of the cheater's own unresolved internal world. Now, the second driver is fear, loss, and the search for proof of life. Now, this driver is a bit darker and more confronting, but it is real and it is documented. Research consistently shows a spike in infidelity following a major personal loss, a parent dying, a serious illness, a significant failure, a milestone birthday that triggers existential dread. What Dr. Perel and other researchers describe is the affair as a response to the sudden visceral awareness of mortality. When someone is confronted with loss or the passage of time, the brain sometimes generates a desperate, almost primitive need for proof of continued existence. I am still here. I am still desired. I am still alive in the way that I used to be. The affair becomes a life affirmation. The combination of risk, novelty, and desire temporarily drowns out the existential noise. People in these states often describe the affair as making them feel more alive than they have in years. Not because their partner failed to make them feel alive, but because their internal crisis was producing a hunger that had nothing to do with what was waiting for them at home. Again, this is not a justification. It is simply a mechanism. The fact that the brain generates this response does not mean the person had no choice. They did. But understanding what internal state made the choice feel possible is different from endorsing the choice itself. And now the third driver, entitlement. Now this is the least sympathetic end of the spectrum, and I'm not going to go easy with this one. A significant portion of infidelity is driven purely by entitlement. The belief, sometimes conscious and sometimes buried just below the surface, that the rules that apply to other people do not apply to you, that your desires are more important than your partner's feelings, that you can manage this without consequences, that you can simply do what you want and get away with it, or that you deserve more than you currently have just because you want it. Research consistently links narcissistic personality traits to higher rates of infidelity, not because every cheater is a narcissist. They are not, but because entitlement-driven cheating is characterized by low empathy for the person being harmed and high prioritization of personal gratification. The partner's pain is registered, but it registers less than the cheater's own desire. There is no other way to put this to make it more comfortable. Some people cheat out of pure selfishness, and they execute this without adequate regard for the person it is destroying. And this category of people is probably larger than we want to admit. Now there is the neuroscience layer to cheating. And this layer answers the question, why someone who knows cheating is wrong still goes through with it. Infidelity activates the same dopamine reward pathway in the brain as things like gambling and drug use. Things like novelty, risk, secrecy, desire, when combined, produce a neurochemical hit that the brain experiences as intensely pleasurable. A long-term relationship, by its nature of being stable and known and safe, cannot generate the same response. Not because it is worse, but because novelty is the primary driver of dopamine release, and novelty is precisely what long-term relationships run out of first. This is not a flaw in committed relationships, it's a fact about the brain, and it is why the idea that love alone should be sufficient protection against infidelity, although emotionally true, is neurologically incomplete. Love does not turn off the dopamine system. The only thing that turns it off is conscious, sustained, and daily choices made. And there is also the oxytocin problem. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone released during physical intimacy. The brain was not designed to cleanly separate sex and emotional attachment, which is why people who enter affairs purely for physical reasons ever so frequently end up developing genuine feelings they did not anticipate or want. The brain bonded. And now there is a second entanglement that makes everything more complicated. Then there is also a finding which I think is important for anyone making a decision about the future. Research by Dr. Kayla Nope at the University of Denver found that people who cheated in one relationship were 3 times more likely to cheat in the next one. The behavior, without serious intervention and accountability, tends to repeat. Now I want to come back to something I mentioned earlier. If you have ever been cheated on, whether recently or years ago, whether you stayed or you left, whether you have healed or are still somewhere in the middle of it, one of the most painful things that happens in the aftermath is the question you cannot stop asking yourself. What did I do wrong? What was missing in me? What did they find in that other person that I could not give them? Why was I not enough? And I want to tell you that with everything the research says, in most cases, the answer to all of those questions is nothing. You did nothing wrong. Nothing was missing in you. There was no version of you that would have prevented it, because the driver of the cheating was inside the person who cheated. An identity crisis that predated you, a fear that they never told you about, an entitlement that they never examined, a brain chasing a chemical hit that your love, however real and however generous, was never neurologically equipped to compete with. And that does not mean your relationship did not matter. It does not mean their love for you was not real. Both things can be true simultaneously. Someone can genuinely love you and still make a choice that hurts you. The love was real. The choice was also real, and the choice was theirs to make, not a consequence of who you are. What happened to Ugo, if what he describes is true, was not a reflection of his worth as a husband or a man. He gave generously and was allegedly met with betrayal. That says everything about the choice that was made. It says nothing about him. And whatever your version of that story is, the thing you have carried, maybe quietly, maybe for a long time, the same applies to you. Being a good partner protects you from nothing in this world, but it says everything about your character. And your character is the only thing that you have to keep, regardless of what someone else does with it. So to answer the question, why do good people cheat? The answer is because cheating is rarely about the partner and almost always about the person doing it. It is about a self that got lost somewhere in the obligations and perceived dullness of a long-term relationship. It is about fear and the brain's desperate search for proof of life. It is about entitlement and the quiet belief that your desires outweigh someone else's pain. And it is about a neurochemical system that treats novelty and risk as rewards regardless of the moral cost. None of this is an excuse. All of it is an explanation. And the difference between those two things is the entire point of today's episode. Now, understanding why someone did what they did does not mean you have to forgive them. Not on anyone's timeline at least. But whenever you're ready, it does not mean you have to stay. And it also does not mean you have to make peace with what happened before you are ready. What it means is that you stop making their failure about your worth. And you stop asking what was wrong with you. Because in most cases, the honest answer is nothing was wrong with you. And this has been the Clarity Podcast. I am Angelo. And if this episode has explained something that did not make sense to you before, please share it to one or two people. And if you are not following our ex, formerly Twitter, the handle is in the description of this episode. Please give us a follow. See you next week. And until then, think clearly.